Hi, Facebook. This is Nancy Kelsey again with the City of Cleveland social media team. Thanks so much for tuning in. So today we're continuing our New Year's resolution series. So maybe this year in 2020 you decided this is the year I'm going to try to be more sustainable. I'm going to try to be greener at home or in my business or in whatever capacity. So we have our expert with the City of Cleveland, Kristin Hall. I'm going to let her introduce yourself, and if you can also tell us, Kristin, a little bit about what the Office of Sustainability is and what you guys do here.
Sure. Well, thank you, Nancy, and good morning, Clevelanders. So I'm the Director of Sustainability for the Mayor's Office of Sustainability here at the City of Cleveland. Our office, in a nutshell, is trying to just make the city greener and cleaner. So that may be within our own municipal operations, trying to be more efficient, use less resources, etc., educate our employees, but also out in the community, engaging our residents, our businesses, our nonprofit organizations, to sort of rethink how they're operating, how they're living, and get themselves on a path that's going to help make us more sustainable.
Yeah, perfect. I think we're all probably very conscious of trying to do that, so I'm very excited to hear some of the tips that you have for us about how to be better at this and to clear up common misconceptions. So first thing, I think, along those lines, if we could talk about recycling. Recycling is everybody's best effort to try to be good at home about the products that we use and how to recycle them. But there's also a lot of misconceptions. Could you talk to us a little bit about recycling?
Sure. I kind of refer to recycling as our gateway sustainability. So if you start getting in the habit of recycling at home, it really helps you to sort of rethink some of the things that you are using, how you're using them, maybe some of your buying habits, some of your eating habits, or maybe not eating habits if you're letting food go to waste. So kind of getting some of that down, getting into those good recycling habits is something that is just a great practice to get into, and really I think has ripple effects into the rest of your life. As many of you may know, in Cleveland, Cuyahoga County, across the country, we have some recycling challenges. For a very long time, we were sending a lot of our dirty recyclables overseas, a lot to China, and eventually they said, we don't want your junk anymore, so they stopped taking it. And then that means our local recyclers here have a much harder time trying to find markets for the materials that we're sending to them. Add to that, if we aren't sending them clean, sorted materials to a certain extent, there's a lot of contamination, and they're either they have to divert them to landfills because it costs them too much to process it out. So we don't want to pay $100 a ton for recycling, but if we want to do it correctly, we have to make sure we're sending them the right items.
Yeah.
And some of those market challenges have forced some more domestic here locally in Cleveland, well, in the Ohio region, and in the United States, to start popping up, because we do have materials that can be reused. It's just up to us locally to try to figure out how we can repurpose some of those. So for those of you that are frustrated with recycling, I want to tell you, please stick with it. Please keep those habits going, because as those markets continue to strengthen, there's going to be, I don't want to say more that can be recycled, but there's going to be more demand for some of those items that we are disposing of.
Yeah.
So I think one other piece, and maybe before we get into some of that other stuff, we can go through just some quick reminders of what is and is not recyclable here in Cleveland, but really this is true for Cuyahoga County. All of these materials are pretty much the same across the board, so if you're in Northeast Ohio, please just try to follow some of these rules. We have some examples, but know that there's a whole lot more there.
And if I can just add, Kristin, we can drop a link in the comments here, because we'll talk about a lot of things, and I'm sure you guys will have more questions, and we'll drop a link in the comments, because this is a lot to keep straight for anybody. So we'll drop a link in the comments so you guys have a little bit of something to refer to.
Yes, and I find the Cuyahoga Recycles website is a great resource, because they have a what do I do with. So if you have an item you're not sure about, you can just type it in, and they help fill that in. So I'm gonna dive in here. We've got our recycle bin. So some of these items that you might find are like cardboard and other paper, office papers, etc. This can go into your recycle bin. It's also really important, if you'll notice, all of our items are loose. They are not placed into a bag.
So none of these in your recycling?
No, none of these. You might see them as blue, etc. We want to keep those out. One of the main reasons is when this material goes to the recycling facility, if they're in bags, they don't have the time to go opening up those bags, dumping the material out. Probably 7 times out of 10, when they open them up, there's garbage in there anyway. So from a business perspective, it doesn't make sense for them to keep those bags. So, and additionally, if you're sending them, some folks think this is recyclable. This can very easily clog up the gears of a machine. When that happens, you have to shut down, stop operations, get the clog out. Again, that costs money. So we want to keep those recycling costs down. We need to keep this kind of stuff out of there. So we talked about some of the paper and cardboard. Try to break down your cardboard if you can. Sometimes it's really easy. I just step on it, makes it
Yep.
flatten really quickly. And then we'll move on to some of our cans. So we've got aluminum cans that you might find for soda, other adult beverages, etc., as well as metal cans for food, etc. The biggest thing is you want to make sure that these items are rinsed out before you dispose of them. So if this had beef ravioli in it, we don't want to be sending a bunch of beef ravioli because guess what? It can get all over our other recyclable
And
materials.
that's what the city considers contaminated, right?
Among other things, yes. So that adds to the contamination. So maybe 1 can of beef ravioli isn't a big deal, but if I've got a week's worth of beef ravioli that is being scattered all over my recycling, it could ruin the whole bin. So we want to try to just make sure that's rinsed out.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to scrub it clean with soap and water, but make sure there's no more ravioli in there before you throw it away. Glass bottles and jars are also recyclable. We encourage you to put the caps back on. And that's true for any bottles and jugs. You want to put the caps back on to help ensure that those might have a chance at being recycled as well. So then the other piece I want to get into is the plastics, because that tends to be the much more complicated one. Unfortunately, like I talked about, those overseas markets aren't taking our plastic especially anymore. So where we used to send all kinds of plastics to them, we have to be really strict about what can go there, at least right now. Again, hopefully if we continue to put the right things in the bins, that may open up other markets who want some of those plastics. But for now, our guidance across the whole county is just bottles and jugs. So we kind of think about it, anything that goes up a little bit at the lip, around the lid. So we've got, for example, this creamer here, kind of comes up, got a lid. Other plastic bottles here, even your Snapple jugs, we seem to have lost the lid here. We do put our lids back on, again, just to make sure that those get recycled. I've got a peanut butter jar here. Again, as an example, we want to make sure we're rinsing this out once you've used all the peanut butter. Plus, you don't want to leave any peanut butter in the jar. You paid for it. So those are some of the main things that are recyclable.
Let me ask you a quick question,
Yeah.
Kristin, because one of the things I always find confusing, and I think you can help us kind of clear up, is whenever I see this symbol
Yeah.
with the recycling right there, I always think, hey, that has a recycling symbol, I can throw that in the bin.
Yes.
But that's not always the case.
That
right?
is not always the case. Unfortunately, somebody decades ago had this great idea that we're going to use this symbol to tell us what kind of plastic it is. Now, for a good while, when we were taking every kind of plastic, those numbers are helpful because then you can know, oh yeah, we can do numbers 1 and 2, but not number 5. How confusing is that? Who can keep up with that? That is not
Right.
easy for your usual or your average person.
Right.
So for us, we're trying to keep it, ignore those numbers, because you know what? You'll even see numbers like that on styrofoam cups. This plastic here has one of those numbers on it, I'm sure. That's it. Yeah,
And
this
you
one
already
has
said
it as well.
very clearly, plastic bags do not
Do
belong.
not put this in the bag. So you can see this has, and it's in a recycling symbol. Of course, that is very confusing.
Right.
I've heard that some of the plastics industry is hoping to maybe shift away from that, or hopefully go for a different symbol. Shoot, make it a square. But for now, ignore those numbers. Stick with your bottles and jugs, and make sure they're rinsed out, and that's going to make sure that you're putting the right things in. Unfortunately, and sometimes it does pain me to say this, when in doubt, throw it out. If you aren't sure, if it's something that you think could or could not be recyclable, we all want to be wishful recyclers and hope that something could be. But if you're not sure, it's better to throw it in the trash versus risking contaminating your recycling. So I want to talk just a little bit about some of the things that should not go in your bin, just as a reminder. I think it's easy to see what should go in there, but sometimes you run into things where you're like, well, this is plastic. So
Can I really quick?
Yeah.
So this you can take back to your grocery. Some places will take this though, right?
yes, some grocery stores, I know the Marks by Me has a bin that is set up for taking those. So you can always collect them. There are other purposes for it, etc. But overall, I think we want to shift away from that single one-time use item to something that's more reusable. So yes, you may get
Sorry,
those.
I know we're jumping around.
Yeah. Yes, you may get those, and that's going to be a theme kind of throughout our talk today is what are some of those alternatives? How can you sort of get ahead of the game before you even have to worry about disposing of something? Because that's the other piece is what are you doing in your daily life that's generating this much waste? Maybe you don't want to have to worry about throwing that much away. Well, if you have less things, there's less to worry about. So before I get away from that, let's talk about what is not recyclable just for a second. So you see I've got our famous red Solo cup here. No cups or disposable serviceware of any kind is recyclable, unfortunately. Same thing with, say, our plastic forks and silverware. While yes, they are plastic, and yes, even some of them have these ones don't, but sometimes they even have the little number on it. It does not mean that our recyclers here in Northeast Ohio want these items. Because when you think about it, if I was to take this cup and smash it all up, it can break into a lot of little pieces. This one's not, it starts to shatter a little bit. Well, getting things from your curbside bin to the recycler does just this. And you know what? When it gets into these little pieces, there isn't the value that you would have from something that's a bigger container. So we try to say no cups of any kind. That includes some of our I'll cover up the logo. Some of our famous local coffee places, because a lot of times these have a liner on the inside. So, and if you put beverages in it, it kind of takes away from the integrity of it and makes it less valuable to recyclers. Again, any kind of films that may have had food in them should be disposed of. I brought this Post-it package out because this one's a little tricky. It's got multiple items in it. So this plastic, again, unfortunately is not recyclable because, again, it's not a bottle or jug.
Right.
But the paper you could pull off and dispose of in the bin.
Okay.
So we got some films, and then of course our infamous little takeout containers. Again, we want to give these another life, but unfortunately they are disposable. So we encourage you, if you're able to, bring some of your own Tupperware containers with you. Restaurants may be a little touchy about whether or not they will put it in there for you, but you can very easily scrape your own plate and throw it in, and then you're making sure to take home your material.
That's great. So if you've got to-go stuff, if you bring your own Tupperware, you've found that restaurants are generally pretty okay about letting you just package it up in your own not disposable.
For the most part, you may find a few that are maybe not quite on board with it, but if that's the case, maybe that's not somewhere that you want to keep going as well. We want to make sure that places that you patronize have some of the same values that you also appreciate. So we kind of talked about some of the alternatives. So we've got all of this waste that we're disposing of, but there are ways that you can eliminate some of that waste from the front end. Rethinking sort of what you're consuming, how much are you using, what is sustainability. Trying to make the world a better place can be very overwhelming, but if you think about, what am I doing? What's sort of my individual action? That can really help. So we've got a few alternatives here that I wanted to just kind of showcase and highlight so that you can sort of rethink some of it. So from reusable water bottles, being able to fill up anytime you want. You don't have to pay for water, and then it's really convenient to always have water on hand. Hydration is very important to human health. To reusable coffee mugs and other dishes. We have several of our staff have these great reusable silverware. So these are nice. I keep them in my work bag, so whenever I go to meetings or conferences that serve lunch, I've got this ready to go.
And those are just washable.
Yep,
Keep them
they're
for multiple uses.
Yep, they're bamboo. They can be reused many times. And then you could even keep this in your lunch pack so that you've always got silverware with your lunch as well.
One of the things I've seen similar to that are the reusable straws. What's your take on reusable straws?
I think they are a great first step, especially if you do find that you like to use straws a lot. I've heard a lot from parents that straws are a really great way for them to keep their children from spilling drinks all over themselves. But that can really add up. If you think about how many straws you've used in your lifetime, that could be in the hundreds probably. Yeah. So we have a number of restaurants locally that are choosing to skip the straw, so they are not offering a straw unless somebody has asked for it, or they've maybe shifted over to paper straws as well. So it's one of those things you just have to, again, rethink, do I need it? Do I need this straw to drink this beverage? Sometimes you may, sometimes it's a convenience if you're maybe out at an event or something, but if you don't need it, try not to take it, and that's really, I think, kind of the motto for sustainability. Only use what you need.
Yeah, because straws themselves are not recyclable. They fall in that category.
Correct,
right?
Correct. So we talked about some of the water pieces for lunches. You can get some containers that help you bring your lunch in rather than having to go out. And you know what? That's going to save you a lot of money, probably help your health a little bit as well. And of course, the good old reusable bag. So want to make sure, when you're heading to the grocery store, try to stock up on these. Many of us have them. Sometimes it's remembering to bring them into our homes, or bring them, not into our homes, bring them from our car into the store, or put them back in our car afterwards. I think we're hoping to get some little decals that will remind you of that as well. And I find, and I don't know if you've used these as well, but they're great for just carrying lots of stuff. I can fit 2 or 3 times as much into one of these bags as I can, a regular plastic grocery bag, and then easily carry it on my shoulder as opposed to trying to cut off my circulation carrying a bunch of other bags. So that's a lot on recycling, but hopefully helps paint the picture, and I think ties into some of the other sustainability topics that we try to practice. We have some cards here if you want to take a look at those with just the list of materials. You can do a quick shot of those.
Yeah. So this is a good just overview for people to keep handy about what's recyclable and what's not.
Yeah.
So this
keep
is
it simple.
Yeah, and I think we have a link for this, or to the website at least, where you can get a more comprehensive look. Even if I think it lets you search for specific things if you're not sure if something is recyclable.
Yes.
Batteries, wood, things like that.
Oh yeah, even things that you might find around your house, furniture, and then they provide links to places that will recycle those items as well. So it's not just always got to go in the landfill. There are some companies, but again, you have to take that personal responsibility to actually want to dispose of it in the right way. And that for me is what sustainability really means. Are you willing to be a little inconvenienced, make a little bit of a sacrifice so that all of us are sort of working towards that same goal of a greener, healthier place to live.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to segue a little bit to some of the other programs. So sustainability does a lot of things to try to help the community learn more about how to be greener at home. So if we could talk a little bit about rain barrels and your rain barrel program, that would be great. Can you tell us a little bit about it? Because some people, this might be their first introduction to the City of Cleveland's Office of Sustainability. Okay,
well, so we, like Nancy mentioned, we have a lot of different areas that we work on. Water is one of them. We've had our rain barrel program now in its 11th year, I think, going into its 12th year. We've given out more than 5,000 rain barrels since it started in 2008. For those of you that don't know what a rain barrel is, it's a big 55-gallon plastic drum that connects to your downspout, diverts some of the water and captures it, and then it's got a spigot on the bottom so you can drain that and use that water for various purposes at home, from watering your garden to your lawn, washing your cars, kind of anything that you may have. That water is not drinkable. If you have a rain barrel at home, please don't drink your rain barrel water. But it's a great way to capture water after it rains, and it also helps reduce the pressure on our stormwater system. So if you're here in Northeast Ohio, we sometimes get some very wet weather, and that can lead to some big water quality issues from too much stormwater inundating our systems, and we're not able to treat it as quickly as it's coming in. That water goes out to our lake, and if you didn't know, that's where our drinking water comes from. So we want to make sure that we're sending as clean of water as possible to the lake so that we're getting as clean as water as possible out of it. So the rain barrels help reduce that. And, one barrel, that's 55 gallons. But when we kind of look at that as the bigger picture, we've had 5,000 distributed. That can really add up and help reduce strain on our storm system. So our summer program runs June through August. So we'll host workshops throughout the community where folks can sign up, get a free rain barrel, and learn a little bit more about the issue and why rain barrels are so important, as well as how to properly use it and take care of it. So we'll provide you a link so that if you are interested, you can sign up to be on our list probably around, I would say, April. We're hoping to have those workshops scheduled, so we'll announce that a little bit more formally and let folks know how to sign up so that they can participate in those workshops.
Yeah, great. One of the other things we wanted to talk a little bit about was about composting and any tips or information people should generally know if they're interested in trying composting. Sure,
we definitely recommend composting. It's a great way to both recycle your food scraps, but also any yard waste that you may have. I know for me, every fall, it's great to have a place to put my leaves that isn't going to be thrown away. So I know that those will be repurposed and help make a healthier soil for me. So our county solid waste district hosts some backyard composting workshops. So you can sign up for one of those if you're looking to get started. There's tons of resources on the web as well. Really, it's about diverting your food scraps, mostly fruits and vegetables. You can do some eggshells and a few other things, but if you're doing it at home, you want to keep things like meat and dairy out of there. And then also turning it over. So as you're putting those things in your compost bin outside, you want to make sure that you're mixing that up so it has a chance to break down and turn into that good soil. I personally love to keep my compost bin or bag in my freezer. So it's easy for me. I just throw my food scraps in there, and then whenever I fill that up, I take it out to my bin outside. I don't have to go outside every time I'm cooking or disposing of food, and it helps keep the smells and liquids and things. Composting can get a little messy, sometimes even gross.
Yeah.
So it helps to just keep everything kind of frozen, and then it's really convenient because it's right there while I'm cooking. I can just pop things into that compost bin. So we can get you a link to the county's compost workshops because they'll give you a whole lot more detail about the different types of composting you can do. Backyard is probably the easiest, but there's other things like vermicomposting where you actually use worms to break some of that down. That might be for maybe some of you more extreme composters out there. We'll ease you into it. And yeah, we'll pass that information on.
Yeah, absolutely. And you might be noticing a theme here that we're talking a lot about diverting things from landfills, reusing things. So there's a lot of tips on your website we can also link to that you might find helpful to do this. So any other programs that we want to touch on before we segue into some more information about your office?
Not that I can think of right now, but I will, between now and when we get those links to you, if there's anything else, we'll make sure to post those on there as well.
Okay, and then one of the other things I wanted to mention was we talk about reusing items. So some of the stuff that you might be considering putting in your landfill can easily be donated. Someone else can find a use for that.
Yes. And we've got lots of great resources here locally from the Upcycle Part Shop to, I've got a list here, give me 1 second. Rebuilders Exchange, even local Goodwills and Salvation Army can take some of that material. It's best before you go donating, visit that organization's website and see what they will and will not take. So the Upcycle Part Shop, for example, they provide art supplies out of what we call upcycled materials, so materials that would otherwise be destined for a landfill. They open it up to artists that can come and turn that into great works. However, they're particular about what they can take because we don't want to unload all of our junk onto just one organization. So it's worth checking out websites first, seeing what can be donated, turning things into art projects, fixing things when they are broken rather than just going out and buying a new one. I think we've gotten into a habit as a society where I buy something because it's cheap, that cheap thing breaks, so I go out and buy another cheap thing, as opposed to maybe investing a little bit more on the front end so that that thing doesn't break as often,
Right.
and or when it does break, taking it to get repaired as opposed to going out and buying a new one.
Absolutely.
It can be, again, it's a little bit of an inconvenience, but you got to ask yourself, you know, how much, what is the world that I want to live in, and what am I contributing to that? So that's, you know, just a question that you'll need to ask yourself.
Okay. One of the other things that I wanted to touch on was, I guess, an overview for people. This might be your first introduction to the Mayor's Office of Sustainability, and they do a lot. As you hear Kristin talk about all this, they do a lot, and this is just a snapshot of what they do. Can you tell us a little bit about what the Mayor's Office of Sustainability does and kind of how Sustainable Cleveland came to be? Last year was, of course, the anniversary year, but yeah, if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so let's start with the Office of Sustainability. We started in 2005, really just trying to save the city money and reduce its ecological footprint. So it started with just one person, and his job was to save the city enough money that it basically paid for his salary. And I think we can say it's working. We did some energy efficiency projects that really help show that savings, that you know, if you invest a little in some sustainability practices now, you're going to see that payback over the long term.
And you guys are doing things from then to now that people might see. If you ever are in the Willard Garage and you see the electric vehicles the city has, for example,
Yeah.
there are just little things that the city is doing that really is geared at making a big impact, because this is the kind of thing that's important to your office and of course important to Mayor Jackson.
Yeah, and some of it might be behind the scenes, or maybe you wouldn't even notice it. So upgrading lighting in a rec center, it helps reduce your energy costs or energy use and then energy costs. But if you are just a rec center visitor, you may not have even noticed it, other than, oh, maybe it's a little brighter in here, or maybe not so bright because they're choosing to keep some of those lights off because we have a lot of natural light coming in. So a lot around energy efficiency in our facilities, making sure that we're building as green as possible. We have a sustainable municipal building policy, so any buildings that we are building as the city of Cleveland must meet the LEED Silver certification. We also do a lot to just track the city's energy and utility usage, energy and water usage. So if we see that maybe a facility is using a lot more energy than they normally have been trending, we can go and work with the facility staff there and help understand what's happening, how do we get it back down and get to those more stable, or even reducing our energy costs in those buildings. We also work closely with a lot of other city departments, so on issues like transportation. You might see those scooters around downtown. We worked very closely with our planning department to get that ordinance in place so that we could have those scooters, but we want to have them safely on our streets, and that was really important. But since they came out last summer, so we want to keep those going and make sure that we provide some of those alternative modes of transportation for the folks that are interested in it. We also do a lot with youth through our Youth Sustainability Leadership Program. That we invite high school students to come join us at our summits every year, and then throughout the year work with them to learn more about sustainability, but also if they are so inclined, do some of their own sustainability projects, either back at their own school, in their community, or even at home if that's where they want to work. So,
and your summit's usually in the fall. If someone were interested, is there information yet, or should they stay tuned?
Stay tuned. I think we will be hopefully announcing something in the next couple of months in terms of what that looks like. So we had 10 years of summits, 11 total, with our culminating one being this last October, and those are really awesome events that bring the community together, but I think we may be looking at a little different model that might be still bringing members of the community together, but maybe not in that same way. So
okay,
stay tuned. We will see what comes up.
Yeah, of course we'll keep you guys posted once announcements are made.
Yeah. And then we've got a lot of other projects that we are working on that stem from our climate action plan. So in 2018, we updated the Cleveland Climate Action Plan, and really important for this one was a big focus on equity and how members of our community are going to be impacted by climate change, as well as so what can we do to help slow or prevent some of that, but also how do we be more resilient and be able to bounce back when we do experience some of those climate disasters. So one of the projects that we're just getting underway is looking at a 100% renewable energy feasibility study. We have a goal of getting to 100% renewable energy, but that's a big lift, and we need to be able to make sure that we can do it the right way and also provide jobs and whatever workforce training is needed. We want it to support our economy, so we're working through that now with a number of partners.
Okay, great. And there are things that people probably have seen in more recently in the news about tree canopy revitalization and all these things that tie back to your climate action plan and your Cleveland tree plan.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about some of those pieces and I guess how they tie to the climate action plan?
Mm-hmm. So trees are a good one, and I appreciate you bringing that up. We know that we're expecting a warmer climate here in Cleveland. That warmer climate can mean bigger impacts when we have heat waves, especially over the summer. So our tree canopy is one of the main protectors of our city in helping to reduce that what's called urban heat island effect, in basically providing shade over the city. So our tree canopy was at about 19%, and it is falling a little bit based on the last inventory. And some of that is our trees are getting older. We've got some that are 80 plus years old, and they only live for so long, so they need to come down. We don't want them to be a hazard to our residents or businesses. So when they are that in a way that could be at risk for someone, falling on someone, we want to make sure that they are taken down in a safe manner. Mm-hmm. And then we've done a lot of tree planting, but it takes a while for that canopy to get established. Imagine you plant a little 2-inch tree, it's going to take a good probably 10 years until that even pings on a satellite view for tree canopy cover. So for us, trees are huge in helping to reduce some of the impacts from climate action or from climate change, but they also do a lot to help prevent some of it. So they're basically the lungs of our planet, and they are helping to absorb a lot of that carbon dioxide that's in the atmosphere. As well as, we mentioned stormwater before, and the wetter weather that's expected. Trees can soak up a ton of stormwater, and they need it. They love the water. So the more trees that we can have to help absorb some of that and kind of act as sponges for our ground, the better off we're going to be. Plus, I think that we've seen that there's studies, the more folks are around kind of trees and nature, there's certain health benefits and just mental health benefits to doing that. So the more trees that you can kind of see in your daily life, the more better off you're going to likely be.
Yeah. So we could keep talking to Kristin for another hour.
Right.
There's a lot to cover. The very last thing I wanted to mention that people might not know is that Mayor Jackson is a climate mayor.
Oh, yeah.
He's part of this climate mayor initiative. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is? Because this is, I think, a good illustration of us putting our money where our mouth is. We're not just saying you should all do all this. We're really investing in the city of Cleveland, as Kristin's kind of already illustrated, in showing those principles ourselves in what we do. So if you could tell us a little bit about that.
So some of you may know, some of you may not. The U.S., and not all of us in the U.S., opted to pull out of the Paris Agreement that basically sets some standards for all countries to help reduce their contributions to climate change. When that happened, there were a number of mayors here in the U.S. that said, no, we are still doing this. This is still very important to us. We understand where climate change is going, and we don't want to continue contributing to it. We're going to continue doing things here locally that help support that bigger vision, like updating our climate action plan, etc., that will help get us to that point. So the mayor agreeing to participate in that really just shows Cleveland's commitment to making our city more resilient to climate change, but also improving quality of life for our residents through that process. So we're very excited to have his support on this, because there are many communities that I think want to do this but may not have some of that leadership to carry that torch forward. So it's been huge having the mayor behind us, and has helped really see some big changes over the last couple, but even last 10 years since Sustainable Cleveland was formed. So
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
really exciting. I think we're already seeing a changing climate. I was just looking up before this today. It's 50 degrees today. It's January. Cleveland, we are not used to this. Our average temperature is 34 degrees.
Wow.
We hit 69 on Saturday. I was looking for just January so far, the average temperature is 56. That's 22 degrees warmer than what we are used to. And while I think many of us in Cleveland are like, warmer weather, cool, I don't need to wear my big winter coat outside, we aren't sure what that could mean. That might not mean beautiful warm weather for the rest of the winter. That could mean some big swings with other extreme weather. If you remember that polar vortex we had a while back where it was below zero for a week plus, those are the types of things that we could experience. Many folks are not worried about it. They've got their winter coats, they're okay. But we have some vulnerable populations that really may be terribly impacted by some of these changes. So a lot of what our work is starting to shift towards is making sure that those folks are as prepared as possible, have the resources that they need, even taking a few steps back to what are some of the circumstances in their life that make them vulnerable. How can we help kind of deal with those more proactively rather than reactively, so that we aren't trying to bounce back from a natural disaster but can instead bounce forward. So
Yeah.
we're very excited about it.
Okay, great. Well,
Yes, got some good stuff coming in 2020, so we'll keep you in the loop.
Yeah, excited to hear more about it. Maybe we'll revisit with you a little bit later in the year
Yeah.
to talk about some of those things.
Yeah, maybe around World Water Day or Earth Day. March or
Sure,
April.
sounds
So,
good.
Yeah.
So I just want to wrap up by saying we talked a little bit about some of the things. If this is your New Year's resolution to be greener at home, a lot of tips for you, and I hope we illustrated that at the City of Cleveland, we're practicing what we preach. We have the Office of the Sustainability that is constantly helping us get there and be accountable for being sustainable in the city as well. So thank you guys.
Don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Reach out to us. We'll do our best to get back to you as fast as possible, or connect you with other resources so that you can help make this a green city on a blue lake like we are.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for watching, and thank you, Kristin, for sharing your expertise with us.
Awesome.
You guys have a good day.
Have a good 2020.